Before we begin, drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in Nairobi, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in France, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now let's dive into the story. The sound of hooves echoed like thunder through Dustvale, and by the time Clara Wynn reached the corral, the buyer's wagon was already rolling away with her mare Juniper. Her heart thudded against her ribs as she stumbled forward, dirt clinging to her skirt. "Jasper! You didn't!" she cried, voice trembling. Her husband, Jasper Moreland, the richest man in town, leaned against the fence post, chewing a toothpick, his eyes cold as stone. "We don't need a woman's horse in this house," he said flatly. The sun flared behind him, cutting his face into shadow. Clara's hand shook. That horse was her last link to her father, her freedom, her pride. Jasper spat, turned, and walked toward his carriage. "You'll learn to live without sentimental things," he said. The carriage door slammed, leaving Clara in the choking dust, clutching her chest as the world tilted. The townsfolk pretended not to see her cry. The blacksmith paused, eyes heavy with pity, but turned away. Dustvale had learned never to interfere in Jasper Moreland's affairs. He owned the bank, the land, and half the souls who worked it. Even the sheriff kept quiet. Clara knelt in the dirt where Juniper had stood that morning, tracing hoofprints that were already fading. A wind swept through, lifting her hair like a whisper of ghosts. Her throat burned. She remembered when Jasper used to ride beside her, when he swore he loved her laughter. Now, there was only silence and the faint jingle of coins in his pockets. As night fell, Clara stood by the empty stable, lantern trembling in her grip. The mare's scent still lingered, warm hay and leather. She pressed her face against the stall door, whispering the name she'd spoken since she was 16. Juniper. Her tears fell into the straw. From the main house, laughter spilled through open windows. Jasper was drinking with guests again. The light from his parlor painted the yard gold, but Clara stayed in the dark, her shadow long and broken. Her heart hardened as she watched him raise a toast with another woman, one who wore red silk and smiled like she'd already taken her place. That night, Clara packed a small satchel, nothing more than her Bible, a silver comb, and a ribbon from Juniper's mane. But when she reached the gate, she stopped. She had nowhere to go. Jasper's reach stretched beyond Dustvale. He'd made sure of it. The desert stretched wide and merciless, the stars cold above. She returned to the porch, her hands trembling not from fear, but from fury. Inside, Jasper's laughter rang out again. "To youth," he shouted. The words cut her like glass. Clara's eyes glistened in the lamplight. Something inside her broke, and began to rebuild, quieter, stronger. "To truth," she whispered to herself. And for the first time she didn't mean his. At dawn, she buried Juniper's bridle behind the barn, pressing the earth with her bare hands. Her wedding ring slipped off, falling into the soil beside it. She stared at it for a long moment before leaving it buried. When she stood, her palms were streaked with red dirt, her breath steady. From that moment on, Clara Wynn was no longer Jasper's wife. She was something else, something waiting. The wind rose, carrying dust and promise, and somewhere beyond the hills, a new sound stirred, the soft gallop of a horse she didn't yet know she'd meet again. Long before Jasper Moreland's name filled her life, Clara Wynn was the daughter of a horse trader. Her father, Eli Wynn, was a kind but stubborn man, raising her on the smell of saddle oil and the rhythm of hooves. They lived in a small ranch called Hollow Ridge, where mornings began before sunrise and ended under starlight. Clara learned to ride before she learned to read. Juniper was born the same spring Clara turned 12, a black mare with white markings and a temper like thunder. They grew together wild and free. Back then the world was simple. Hard work, laughter, and the quiet hum of belonging. But when her father died of fever, Hollow Ridge was swallowed by debt. The bank sent men, Jasper's men. He rode up in his polished boots, offering to help her settle what she owed. "You're a fine girl, Miss Wynn," he'd said, tipping his hat. A woman shouldn't face this world alone. He spoke with a calm charm that sounded like safety. Clara, 19 and frightened, believed him. Within 3 months, she wore his ring. At first, Dustvale seemed to welcome her. Jasper's mansion stood on a hill overlooking the town, a house of mirrors, chandeliers, and silent halls. He gave her silks, gold combs, and dinners with people who smiled too wide. But at night, Clara often woke alone. Jasper worked late, always managing the town's affairs. She didn't yet know that managing meant controlling. When she spoke of starting a stable, he laughed. "People will talk, darling. My wife doesn't work." His smile didn't reach his eyes. Days turned into years. Clara's laughter faded. The girl who'd raced windstorms on Juniper's back became a quiet ghost in a grand house. The servants feared her sadness more than his anger. Once, she tried to sell one of her dresses to buy feed for stray horses outside town. When Jasper found out, he called her ungrateful. "You're my wife," he said. "Act like it." She didn't argue. She just stopped talking. But something in her eyes never died. The quiet fire her father left behind. On quiet mornings, she'd ride Juniper across the ridge when Jasper was away, whispering dreams to the wind. The horse seemed to understand. And though Clara didn't know it then, that quiet rebellion, the will to breathe, to love, to ride, would one day save her. 2 weeks after he sold Juniper, Jasper rode into town wearing his best gray coat and a smirk that turned stomachs. The woman beside him was Alma Drew, the widow of a cattle baron who died less than a year ago. She was younger, polished, and mean beneath her smile. People whispered, but Jasper didn't care. He wanted to be seen. When Clara saw them together outside the saloon, her breath caught. Alma placed her hand on Jasper's arm, laughing like she'd already taken the house keys. "Clara," Jasper said lightly, tipping his hat as though they were strangers. The crowd watched. Clara's pulse roared in her ears. "Heard you're moving on quick," she said, voice steady but sharp. Alma's grin widened. "He deserves happiness, Mrs. Moreland," she purred. The missus stung more than a slap. Clara turned, walked back through the dusty street, every step deliberate. She didn't cry this time. She was learning. At home she found the locks changed. A servant, one who used to bow to her, muttered, "Mr. Moreland's orders." Clara stood there, sun burning her shoulders, before walking away. She slept that night in the barn, curled against empty stalls. Her hands clenched around her satchel. By morning she wasn't crying anymore, she was planning. She walked to the blacksmith, Cal Rivers, who'd always treated her kindly. "You still got that old Mustang up north?" she asked. He hesitated. "Clara, Jasper'll ruin me if I help you." She looked him dead in the eyes. "He already ruined me. I just need a horse." Something in her tone silenced his fear. By nightfall she had one, a chestnut stallion with a scar down his flank. She named him Chance. When she rode out of Dustvale that night, she didn't look back. The moon was high, the stars endless. The desert wind cut through her hair as she whispered, "He sold my horse, but he'll never sell my soul." Behind her, the town lights faded, and ahead stretched a world waiting to be reclaimed. Days turned into weeks. Clara camped near the Verde River, surviving on jerky, coffee, and stubbornness. The silence was brutal but freeing. One evening, as the sun bled over Red Rock, she heard a gun cock behind her. "That stallion don't look like yours," a man's voice said. Clara turned slowly. He was tall, with a rifle slung carelessly and eyes the color of worn wood. His beard was rough, his clothes dusty but neat. "Maybe it isn't," she said. "But neither are the stars. Don't mean I can't ride beneath them." The man lowered the gun. "Name's Elias Crow. Used to ride for the army till they ran out of wars." He watched her for a long moment, then tossed her a canteen. "You look like someone who's lost too much to be scared." Clara smiled faintly. "And you look like someone who's been alone too long to be cruel." That night, they shared a fire and silence that felt honest. Elias taught her to shoot, to track, to survive without fear. She told him about Jasper, how love had become a cage. He didn't pity her. "You can't unmake what he did," he said one dawn, watching the river. "But you can build something that makes his shadow small." Their days grew warmer. Once, she caught him watching her braid her hair and look away quickly, flustered. She felt something stir, a fragile, dangerous hope. But Clara wasn't ready. She still carried anger like a brand on her heart. "One day," she said quietly, "I'll make him see me again. Not to win him back, just so he'll know what he lost." Elias nodded. "Then I'll ride beside you till he does." One morning, Clara woke to find Elias gone. In his place lay a single note: "Meet me in Dustvale. The time's come." Her pulse quickened. She saddled Chance and rode hard through sun and dust until the familiar ridge appeared. Dustvale hadn't changed, but she had. People stared as she rode through town, her hair tied back, her eyes steady. She stopped in front of the bank. Jasper was inside. He looked up, startled. "Clara!" His voice cracked with disbelief. "I thought you were gone," she finished. "You thought wrong." The silence stretched. Clara handed him a folded paper. "That's the deed to Hollow Ridge. Bought it from your partner last week." Jasper's face went pale. "You how?" She smiled faintly. "Turns out, freedom sells cheaper than you'd think." Outside, the townsfolk gathered, whispering. Alma Drew watched from across the street, her face twisted. "You made quite a fool of yourself," she hissed. Clara met her gaze. "At least I didn't sell my soul for silk." The crowd murmured. For the first time, Jasper didn't speak. He just turned away. When Clara walked out, she felt lighter. Elias was waiting by the hitching post, grin crooked. "Told you we'd make him see." She looked back once, not out of longing, but closure. The mansion on the hill no longer belonged to her nightmares. "Let's go home," she said. The night Clara returned, fire lit up the hill where Jasper's mansion stood. She saw it from Hollow Ridge, flames clawing the sky, the town below glowing red. Elias galloped beside her, rifle at his back. "Someone set it off," he muttered. Clara's heart pounded. "He did it himself," she whispered. "He can't stand losing." When they reached the gate, the mansion was half gone, smoke pouring from shattered windows. Jasper staggered out, coughing, clutching a satchel heavy with gold. Clara dismounted. "Leave it, Jasper," she called. He looked at her, eyes wild, hair singed. "You think you beat me," he rasped. "I built this town." She stepped forward through the smoke. "Then you burned it yourself." He swung his gun toward her, trembling. "You'll take nothing else from me." The trigger clicked. Elias moved first. The shot split the air. One echo, one breath, then silence. Jasper's gun clattered to the ground, his leg buckling as Elias's bullet grazed his shoulder. Clara rushed forward, catching him before he fell. "Why, Jasper?" she whispered. He stared past her, tears mixing with soot. "Because I was nothing before the money. And you made me remember." His words fell like ash. He slumped, and the satchel spilled open, gold coins rolling into the dirt. The fire crackled behind them as townsfolk arrived, shouting orders, passing buckets. Alma Drew appeared, face pale. "You'll pay for this," she hissed at Clara. "He was mine." Clara turned slowly, eyes calm. "Then take him." She walked away, the flames casting her shadow long across the dust. Behind her, Alma knelt beside Jasper's limp form, screaming his name. Clara didn't look back. Some losses weren't meant to be mourned. Back at Hollow Ridge, Clara washed the soot from her hands, staring into the basin. Her reflection was unfamiliar, stronger, older, unafraid. Elias stood in the doorway, silent. "He was right," she said softly. "I did make him remember." Elias nodded. "And now you'll make something worth remembering." Outside, dawn painted the sky in gold and crimson, the same colors that had destroyed the house on the hill. only now they looked like freedom. For the first time in years, Clara slept without dreams. When she woke, the only sound was Chance nickering in the stable. The fire had burned away more than Jasper's fortune. It had erased the last trace of who she used to be. She was free. But freedom, she knew, had a price. A week later, while riding along the ridge, Clara heard a sound she hadn't expected in months. A soft whinny, high and trembling. She dismounted and followed it through the brush. There, beneath a mesquite tree, stood a young mare, a foal barely grown, black with white markings. Clara's breath caught. Juniper's eyes stared back at her through the filly's gentle gaze. She dropped to her knees, tears spilling. "You found me," she whispered. A rancher named Doyle appeared from behind the tree, tipping his hat. "Found her stray near the flats last spring," he said. "She's wild but smart. You want her." Clara could barely speak. "I'll pay you." "She's yours," Doyle interrupted. "Something tells me she's been waitin' for you." He rode off, leaving Clara alone with the filly. She brushed the animal's mane, feeling the world turn slow and sacred. "I'll call you Unia," she murmured. The filly nuzzled her cheek, soft and trusting. For Clara, it felt like a promise, the past reborn, not to haunt her, but to guide her forward. Elias helped her rebuild Hollow Ridge. Together they raised stables, fences, and a new sign. Wynn's Refuge, horses raised in freedom. Soon word spread. People came from miles away to trade, buy, or learn from the woman who could tame wild hearts. Dustvale began to whisper her name with respect instead of pity. One evening, Elias leaned on the fence, watching her work with Unia. "You've built something," he said. "Something real." She smiled softly. "I just gave them what I never had. Freedom that stays." He looked at her then, truly looked. "You deserve peace, Clara." She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the horizon where the sun dipped low, bathing the land in light. As night fell, she sat by the stable, writing in her father's old journal. "I thought love was something you keep," she wrote. "But it's something you give and let go of. Even when it breaks you." When she closed the book, a single star blinked to life above the ridge. Quiet, steady, endless. Jasper Moreland survived the fire. Weeks later, news spread. He was pressing charges, claiming Elias shot him unprovoked and that Clara stole his property. Dustvale buzzed with gossip. Clara refused to hide. When the sheriff came, she met him at the gate. "Tell him I'll be there," she said. Elias wanted to handle it, but she shook her head. "This is my story. I'll end it." The courthouse was packed. Jasper arrived in a sling, Alma at his side, pretending to dab at tears. Clara walked in calm, wearing her father's old hat. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The judge, a fair man named Judge Hollis, eyed Jasper. "You claim Mrs. Moreland took what belonged to you." Jasper's jaw clenched. "She took my horse, my land, your wife." Hollis interrupted. "She left because you sold her property and locked her out." "That's so." Silence. Clara rose. "He didn't just sell my horse, Your Honor. He sold my dignity. He made me forget who I was. But I remembered. And I won't let him do it to anyone else." The room went quiet. Jasper shifted, sweat beading his brow. Hollis slammed the gavel once. "Case dismissed. Mr. Moreland, you're fined for fraud and arson. Mrs. Wynn, keep your land." The crowd erupted. Clara turned to Jasper one last time. "You had everything," she said softly. "And you lost it trying to own me." He looked away. Alma was already gone. Outside, Elias caught up, grinning. "You just stared down the devil and didn't blink." Clara smiled faintly. Maybe the devil just needed to see his reflection. Together, they rode home through sunlight breaking over Dustvale, two silhouettes against redemption. Months later, a drought hit the valley. The rivers thinned, and the earth cracked beneath the weight of waiting. Horses grew restless, cattle wandered, and fear returned to Dustvale. Clara worked day and night, hauling water from the distant creek. Elias warned her to rest, but she wouldn't. If I stop now, she said, everything dies. One evening, as thunder rolled from the horizon, a figure rode into the ranch. Jasper. He looked thinner, haunted. I need help, he rasped. The fire took everything. Oma left. I've got nowhere. Clara froze. The storm wind whipped around them, lightning splitting the sky. You sold my horse, she said quietly. You burned your house. What do you have left to lose? He lowered his head. My pride. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Clara stepped aside. The barn's open. Work if you can. He nodded, broken but grateful. The rain came hard that night, washing the valley clean. Clara watched through the window as Jasper worked alongside Elias, hauling hay, saving what could be saved. When he stumbled, Elias caught his arm. No words, just men doing what men must. By dawn, the ranch still stood. Jasper approached Clara, hat in hand. I can't undo what I did, he said. But thank you for not letting me die the way I lived. She met his gaze. You don't owe me thanks. You owe yourself forgiveness. He nodded once and rode away into the morning mist, vanishing like a shadow lifted from her heart. Years later, Dustvale changed. The Moreland name faded. Wynn's Refuge grew. Children learned to ride there. Travelers found rest. And the town once ruled by fear found pride in kindness. Clara's hair turned silver, but her spirit never dulled. Elias stayed beside her, though they never married. We've both been burned, he once said. Some fires leave you marked, but alive. One spring morning, Unia gave birth. A small black foal with a white blaze like its grandmother's. Clara knelt in the straw, tears blurring her sight. Juniper, she whispered, smiling. You came back again. She looked up at Elias, who stood in the doorway, sunlight catching his smile. Think she'll run far? He asked. Clara nodded. Farther than we ever did. That evening, she climbed the ridge alone, wind tugging her shawl. Below, the ranch glowed golden in twilight. She thought of her father, of the girl she once was, of the man who broke her and the one who helped her heal. Freedom sells cheaper than you'd think, she murmured, smiling at her own words. But it's worth everything. The wind rose, carrying the scent of rain and horses. Clara closed her eyes and let it lift her hair, her heart, her history. The desert stretched endless before her, wild, untamed and waiting. And somewhere in that wide, forgiving land, a young foal ran beneath the stars.